Righto, morning everyone, or evening, wherever you are. So what I'm going to go through today is fitting a horn nock onto a Yew self bow for an English longbow. Give you guys an idea of how to do that. There's a few different tools that we need. This one's custom made. It's a 14mm spade bit that I've ground to a nice point. It's got a nice long shallow taper all the way to the 14mm width. Need that one to drill the horn out, so I've got a buffalo horn block that I've drilled in, and the whole diameter on this one is 10mm across, or 3/8 of an inch. That's going to give me a nice narrow tip on this bow to keep the mass down. I'm going to do this one with medieval tools, so I have a spoke shave and a knife, not a medieval knife but a knife. That's probably all I'll be using. Other tools that you could use: farrier's rasp, bastard file, and we'll need a ruler. So first thing to do, I've already done the top tip, so I've got a little line on the spade bit. I'm going to get rid of that line and flip over so I've got the other side, and this dust actually helps you see. What happens is I put the spade bit in and then get a line. Now that line is important because that's going to be where the cone finishes in relation to the nock on the bow. So what I'm going to do, now that I've got that marked, I'm going to mark 15mm down from my nock. 15mm is about 5/8 of an inch. And I'm going to transfer a line the entire length around the bow. What that's going to do is actually give me where the cone is going to join the timber, so where that transition from wood to horn is going to be. Next, I'm going to line the line up on the spade bit and trace around it. And then I'm going to sort of blend up into the limb, because the idea with these bows is to get rid of all the mass that we don't need. And we'll do with any bow is to get rid of all the mass you don't need. So you can see I've got about 1/2 inch extra. So I'm just going to trim that off. So that'll give you an idea. We were roughly round in the tips to start with once let's filled this bow out. Once we've got the back mark, then we flip over and mark the belly. So I'll just continue that little line around and then line that up with the line, nice and straight down the bow. Get our marks there. Fade these out where they don't need any more wood. Now flip onto the side of the stave, and as I said, I'm going to use medieval tools, so I'm going to use the spoke shave, and we're just going to take off and get down to that. Just get rid of that pencil line. Keep the cut nice and flat. Doing a little bit of facet removal just to try and make it a little easier, but the idea is to get it flat when you finish up. So what I want to do now is have the cone point right on that transition from sapwood to heartwood. So right at that point, I've got my 15mm line marked and lined up. Then we can scribe some new lines around, and that's where we're going to fade that out. So flip over and repeat on the other side. Start quite high up, get rid of all this material. Just get barely rid of that line, come to a nice point with a nice flat side. So same again, line up the 15mm mark, get that cone point right on the transition from sapwood to heartwood, scribe our lines around. Now we back, the belly. I'm actually going to start on the belly side. Do it first. So I've got my marks there. You want to go nice and slow and easy. You don't want to take off too much too quickly, or you run into problems. Right, so once we're at this point, I've got that cone shapes established. Next thing I need to do is knock these corners off and get it to a round so it'll actually fit in evenly. So to shape a cone, you need more wood removal at the thick end of the cone than at the thin end. So I'm kind of going to focus my removal at the thick end of this cone and just try and really lightly draw out the shavings so that I don't knock the tip of the cone completely off. This is just something that comes with practice. Once you put a lot of these on, you get a good feel for how to put them on, how much wood to take off. But they always need a little bit of fine tuning later. So we're basically round now. That's rounded over, quite close to round. So that's ready to be fitted. So next we'll flip over and we'll do the back side. About what I'm looking for. Same again. Focus on the tip, focus on the wide end of that cone and just drag small shavings, very nice and light shavings, to round that over. Same on this other side. And the end result should be something that fairly closely matches the cone shape. So it goes on, but it's very loose. There's a lot of side to side wiggle and a lot of up and down wiggle, and I've got a gap pretty much all the way around. So how do we get rid of that? They would have dropped a bit of ash, a bit of charcoal into the cone, crushed up some dust. I'm going to use pencil lead, and what this is going to give me is a transfer. So I'll be able to see where to take off more wood. So this horn's going to fit this way, so I have a little curve, and I just need to turn it side to side, just slightly. Right, so I've got a contact point on the front here, no contact on both sides, and I've got a little contact point at the bottom. So I'm really, really high, but a little bit narrow. So what we're going to do then is just take some scrapes off the top of this, because we want to have a transfer pretty much the entire cone. You want contact, as much contact as you can get for the glue to bond. I'm just going to scrape underneath as well a little bit, and I've got a tiny line right on the side there, so I'll just knock that off. Now we'll check it again. So you can already see it's tighter, but I still have a gap. So I'm going to get a transfer. See, I've got a much bigger transfer area now when I've put the graphite onto the end, but I've still got a gap around me for that transition point. So I need to scrape a bit more wood until I have a clean transition with no gap. And this is the fine tuning stage of putting these on. So just a scraper or a knife blade will do plenty well enough. Check again. So tight, still tight, but I still have a gap. So all I'm doing now is shifting the cone into the piece of wood by taking scrapes off, and I'm just going to close that gap. gap is definitely getting smaller, but still more to go. We'll just keep adjusting until it fits. And this transition point here is really the telltale sign of a bow maker that is that knows what they're doing or doesn't know what they're doing, because if this gap has glue lines in it or glue spilling out of it, it was put on quick and nasty. If it's seamless from timber into horn, then they did a good job and took a lot of care in doing it. So that's the first thing I do when I look at English longbows, is check that transition point and see if it's clean or not. So I'm still tight, and the gap is definitely smaller. I'm probably at a 1/2 millimeter now, maybe a little bit less even. And I'm actually, you can see I'm starting to get a ring of transfer, which is good. It means it's getting close to fitted. But we'll just continue scraping until that gap is gone. Still very tight. So you can see I'm starting to get a ring at the top end here. It's starting to create a ring around the horn, around the timber, which is what I want. That's actually potentially now the tip of the timber that's preventing this from slipping in further, because I'm going to transfer the whole way around. I'm just going to scrape this tip off and see if it'll slip up a little further. Very, very close now. Fractions of a millimetre gap around the entire thing, but still not quite there. So just take a bit more off. Very, very close. I'm getting a lot more even transfer around the entire cone of the tip now. So just keep scraping until we get a perfect even transfer with no gap. Very, very close now. Maybe 2 more and it will be fitted. It's basically just a tiny gap on both sides now that I'm trying to close up. And you can feel it start to get much tighter now. So this will be the last pass, and then I'll have a nice joint. Righto. So that's on, and I'll have a perfectly closed gap the entire way around the horn. Just see if I can show that fit. There you can see, beautiful tight fit, no gaps. And then final thing to do is just a bit of glue. So they would have either used hide glue, so an animal glue, or potentially even wax. You can't even shoot these bows with these not even glued on. I've actually tried that and it works. This one I'm going to put on with some super glue so that I know it's going to last. Just jam that horn on and let it sit and be finished. So the next stage on this will be shape the horn, remove this to get it to the shape that I want, and then get rid of all this excess timber here to get a nice smooth blend from the bow limb into the horn and then into the nock. This bow is going to have some small side nocks, so I'll show you how to cut those when I get to that point. At the next stage, I'm just going to leave them sit for an hour or so to dry completely, and then I'll get started into shaping. So I'll continue the video when I get to that. Thanks for watching.